Hello, this video will review for faculty how to create D2L quizzes from other D2L quizzes. And this might be used in the capacity of wanting to make a midterm exam or a final exam made up of questions from other quizzes that you've used previously in the course. In order to do this, you want to make sure you understand the structure of how quizzes work. So when you go to the quizzes area and you choose manage quizzes, you're going to see a listing of all the quizzes that you have in the course. If you choose to edit this quiz, you'll see the quiz questions within the quiz. When you built the quiz questions, if you built them directly into D2L, this is where you would have edited the questions and built the questions right within. When you do this, it also creates a copy of those quiz questions into the question library, and that can be accessed under quizzes and then the question library tab. This is where all the quizzes and the quiz questions from the courses that you, or the quizzes in that course are saved. So it's almost like a resource bank area. Now, let's say, for example, that you have built a quiz in D2L, and the quiz questions do not seem to be in the question library. How can you move them over to the question library so that you can use them in other quizzes, such as like for a midterm or final exam? So the first thing that you want to do is go to the question library, and you want to make a new section. This is just a folder. So you could name it, Quiz 1 Question Library, or whatever you want to name it. And then you would click in that folder, and you can see that by default nothing's in it. Then you would import and browse existing questions. Then you're going to receive this pullout, and you want to sort over here for the source. You're going to be able to see all the quizzes that you have in the course. So then you would want to pick whichever quiz you would like to copy the questions from, and then you'll see all of the different quiz questions. So then you can cherry pick them, or you can select all of them if you want to move all of them. If you want to see what the question actually is and see the wording, you can choose this icon, and it will actually let you see the question itself. So then from there, I'm going to import this in, and I'm going to import these questions into this particular folder in the question library. And again, this would only need to happen if for some reason you had a quiz that you created, but those quiz questions were not already in the question library, which they should be by default. But if you have a quiz with quiz questions, but you go to the question library and you don't see a matching folder, that's how you can move the questions from the quiz into the question library to be able to use them later on. Now your next step is going to be to actually create the quiz, pulling from different folders in the question library based upon the different chapters or different quizzes that you want to include. So I'll go back to the quizzes area. I'll choose to make a new quiz. And the process of creating the quiz will be the same. It's just going to be pulling in the questions. So let's just say this is the final exam. Then I'm going to choose to add edit questions. And then here, notice I can add new questions from scratch. I can actually create new questions, or I can import questions and browse them from the question library and pull them in, which more than likely is what I'm going to want to do in this case, because I'm pulling questions from other quizzes to make one big final exam. So I'm not going to add any new ones at this point, create any new questions. I'm going to be importing them. So I'm going to choose import and browse from question library. And this will look familiar because we were just here. Then I want to choose what folders. Let's say that this final is going to be made up of several different questions from several different chapters, and these were all in the question library, which is the importance of having your quiz questions in the question library to begin with. And I can just expand this out, and then I can read the beginning question, the beginning of the question if I want to. If I want to see more specifics, I can actually click on that and open it up to see more specifics about that particular question. So then I can just pick my questions, and then I can minimize that one and then pick some questions from here. Oh, those are essay questions, so those would be manual grades. So I want to pick ones that are going to be auto-graded. So I'll pick a couple of those. It will also tell you if this question has been used in another quiz. So that may or may not be something that you want, but it will also tell you if these questions have been used in other quizzes in the course. And so we'll cherry pick a couple of these. And then when we're finished, we'll just choose to import them in. And so now all of these quiz questions are into our quiz, and we can continue to import. If maybe I decided, oh, I need some from this other chapter, I can import and browse question library and pick more of them by coming through and grabbing a couple of other ones if I like. Or if I really want some more questions in there that haven't been used before, I can choose to add a new question and go ahead and create a brand new question here. And so I would just create it as normal and then save it in there, and then it would be located here at the bottom. So once I'm finished with that, I can go back to settings, and I'm able to see that all of my quiz questions have come through. And again, they're made up of different ones in the quiz or question library, which is made up from different quizzes. So let's walk through and finish setting up our quiz and go over some of the main things that you want to make sure when you set up a quiz. First of all, we really encourage you to put one question per page. This helps with quiz integrity because they are having to move, they're having to click a button to move to the next page, so they're less likely to copy and paste all the questions out. It's harder for them to just do a search on all the questions, and you're able to get better tracking evidence. You're able to see at what time they went from page 1 to page 2 to page 2 to page 3. You're able to see how long they were spending on one question. If all the questions are on one page, which is what the default setting is, you're not able to see when they're looking at each question. So we really encourage you to put one question per page, or if you have a lot of questions, maybe put 2 questions per page, 3 questions per page, something like that. And you'll see a line for where every page break is going to be. So right now I have it 1 question per page, so they're going to have a page break per every one. We also choose that you shuffle questions. So basically all of the students will get all 14 questions. They'll just get them in different order. So your number 2 might be my number 6, might be your number 4, that kind of thing. So they'll just, and that helps with quiz integrity as well. You can change the point value. Right now all the questions are 1 point each. You can edit these quiz value or these question values and change them if maybe one question is worth 2 points, one question is worth 5 points, that kind of thing. You can also check if a question is a bonus. Bonus questions do not hurt their overall score, they can only help the score. So if I had a 100 on the exam and I got the bonus question correctly, it would allow me to earn higher than 100. If I miss the bonus question, however, it's not going to give a penalty to my overall score. Scrolling on down, you can give a description to your quiz, and I encourage you to do this just to give your students a little bit more information. I like to include information about what content this covers, these chapters, these topics, that kind of thing. I also like to tell them how many questions there are going to be, just so that they know, roughly speaking, are there going to be 10 questions, or are there going to be 70 questions, what we're talking about. And even though they can see it on the page before they start the quiz, I do like to remind them how long they have to take the quiz, how many minutes they have to take the quiz, or how many hours. Moving on, we are going to go to the restrictions tab. And this is going to let the students know when they can start taking the exam and when they can finish up taking the exam. So let's say that they're not going to be able to start the exam until the 2nd, and they have until the 11th to complete the exam. Now this end date, keep in mind, is the last time they can open the exam. So let's say that the last time they can open the exam is at 2 o'clock. If they have 30 minutes to complete the exam, technically they can still submit the exam at 2:30. This is the last time they can open the exam. This is not when they must have it submitted by. So kind of keep that in mind. By default, new quizzes are set to hide from users, so you want to uncheck that and then display it in the calendar, which will put it in the D2L calendar for you. And so now that you have the availability dates, you can come in and put a password. We only really encourage you to put in a password if you're going to be testing like a proctored exam on campus or off campus. Then the proctor would need the password to give to the students to type in. Otherwise, if they're just taking the quiz online, they don't really need a password. They'll just wait till the date opens, and then it will automatically open for them to take. This is where you put in the time limit, so how long they have to take the exam once they open it. For practice quizzes, you might just have a recommended time limit, meaning that it will still track how long it takes them to take the exam, but it doesn't put any requirements on it. For real exams, you can enforce a time limit, and they do it in minutes. And so you put in how many minutes are going to be given, and then you can put in a grace period. So it might be that you put in 1 extra minute of a grace period. So technically, they have 31 minutes. It gives them 1 more minute to go through the process of submitting. Very important is you want to determine what behavior is going to be given to the students, or the students is going to be allowed to do once they once they meet the time limit and extend the grace period. So by default, it's going to be allow the student to continue working. It will let them continue to answer the questions and submit, and it will grade it as normal. It will just tell you by how much it is late. So in this case, they could blow right past the 31-minute mark, continue on, take a whole hour, and it would tell you, hey, this is 30 minutes late. They had to open 30 more minutes, but it still grades it the same. They still get the same grade. So in that case, you may not want that. You may only want every student to have truly 31 minutes. So in that case, you want to change it to the second option, which is prevent the student from making further changes. And so basically at 31 minutes, they'll get a pop-up saying your quiz time has exceeded, you must submit, and then they have to click the submit button, and it will automatically grade what they have completed. It'll mark wrong what they haven't answered, of course. So that is what is encouraged. If they do not submit their quiz will be stuck in progress. So they have to go in and submit the quiz, or you can go in and manually submit the quiz for them. We don't encourage this one, which is it will allow them to continue working, but it will automatically score the attempt, despite what they answered, as 0 after the extended deadline. So I could give them an extended deadline of 5 minutes. So what would happen in this case is they would have their regular 30 minutes, 1 extra minute for grace period, and then they would get the pop-up saying your quiz time has exceeded, please submit. And then they'll get 5 more minutes, and then at that point it will auto submit and give them a 0 for the entire quiz, including the questions they entered correctly. So in most cases, most professors are going to want this second one to where it freezes. It does not take any changes after the 31-minute mark. Any changes that they make are not saved, and they have to submit. So that's the timing that most people want. So then at that point we will save. And then down at the very bottom, we can add in special access. This is designed for students who maybe have ADA accommodations, who are going to get special timing on their quiz. They get an extended time period, or if you know you have a student who's going to need to take the exam on a different date, or maybe after the fact, the student has missed the exam for a legitimate reason and you want to reopen the exam only to that student. This is where you would do that under special access. So I would leave it selected for allow user special access to take this quiz. I would add users to special access. I would give them a different date if needed. I would give them a different time limit if needed. So in this case, I might say, okay, instead of 30 minutes, you get 60 minutes because of the ADA accommodations. Everything else stays the same. And then I pick the particular student that will get that and add that special access. So no one knows that the student gets special access, only you, and they will take the exam as normal. Their grade will populate into the D2L gradebook as normal. Everything stays the same. Next is the assessment tab, which is very, very important. This is going to allow you to sync the D2L quizzes to the assessment area or the D2L gradebook. If you don't set this up, the grades will stay in the quizzes area. They just won't auto-populate to the D2L grades area. And at that point, there's a way that you can push them through, but it's better to go ahead and have this set up before the students take the quiz. So I call this the grading sandwich. So it's this checkbox, this grade item area, and then this other checkbox. So I like to think of this as the two pieces of bread, the bottom bread and the top bread. And then the grade item is the association to the D2L gradebook, and this would be like the meat or something or whatever you might put in the middle of your sandwich. So I have this clicked to where it's auto going to send the grades through, auto publish the attempt. And then here I want to select the grade item that it goes with. If I don't have a grade item already built in the gradebook that I can associate it with, which will be linked here, I can just make a new one. So I'll add a new grade item since I didn't have a final exam already created. So I'll choose the final exam. I'll put the highest score that they can make, which in this case, if you remember, was 14 because I had 14 questions, 1 point apiece. You want to make sure that those stay in sync, that you have the exact same max points here as what you had as the top grade total points in your quiz. And then I'll save that, and then I'll check this box. So this is what you would call the grading sandwich: the top piece of bread, the bottom piece of bread, and then the meat in the middle. And again, if one of these isn't checked, the grades are not going to populate through to the D2L gradebook, and that's okay. You can still push them through after the fact, but it is a good idea to go ahead and have these in place. And then down at the bottom, you choose how many attempts they are allowed to take on the exam. By default, it's going to be 1. In most cases, you probably are going to choose 1. They get to take the quiz once, and then they have their grade. You can say, well, I'll let you take it twice. And when you do that, it will allow you to take it twice, and maybe on your second attempt you can choose to where you only see questions for you only see the questions that you answered incorrectly. So if I had 10 questions on the exam and I answered 5 of them correctly and 5 of them incorrectly, if this is checked when I take it again for the second time, I'm only going to get the 5 questions that I answered incorrectly. So you can choose to do that if you want to, or you can just choose for them to get a whole nother attempt at the exam. And then you can choose what grade level gets pushed into the grade book. So the highest of those 2 attempts, the average of those attempts, their first attempt, whichever one you would like there. One common one that's that faculty choose, other than just the 1 and that's your grade, they'll choose unlimited, to where the student can actually take the exam as many times as they want for practice. But they'll choose the first attempt to be recorded into the D2L gradebook. So you take it your first time, and whatever your first grade is what your actual D2L grade is. But after that, you can actually continue to take the exam for practice. Those grades do get recorded in the quizzes area, so as the teacher, you could see what they're scoring on them, but they don't actually go to the gradebook or affect their overall average. So that's the way you can put in place for this. And then the next tab is going to be the submission views. The submission views is where you detail what the student sees after they submit the exam. So the default view is what you want to edit to see initially after they submit the exam. What do they see? So we'll choose the default view. And initially, this is the text here, but you can change the text if you want. And a lot of times people will allow them to see their score. So show their attempt score and overall attempt score. Essentially, that is their grade. So they'll let them see their grade initially, and then they want, after a certain point, after the quiz is due for everyone else and everyone has taken the quiz, to go back in and see the questions they missed. So in that case, for the default view, which is what they're going to see immediately after submission, we would want to say, no, I don't want them to see any questions immediately. I just want them to see their score. So then I'll save that. Then the next step, if you want, is to add that additional view. So you would add an additional view, and you would say something maybe like, after the quiz ends. And then you might say something here like, these are the questions you missed. Then down below, this is when this view is going to become available to the students. So let's say this quiz was open from the 2nd to the 11th. Maybe on from the 2nd to the 11th at a certain time. Maybe on the 11th, maybe it's due at 1 a.m. and I want at 1:30 a.m. for it to this additional view to become visible. So usually a couple of minutes or even a day after the quiz is due is what most people put in for this availability. Then you can determine what they see at this view. So maybe, yes, I want them to see the questions. Maybe I only want them to see the questions they answered incorrectly. Or maybe I want them to see all the questions, and in that case this would be show all questions with user responses, and that means all the questions that they actually answered. You can choose to just let them see the questions, or you can select this and let them see the correct answers if you want to. Now, what a lot of faculty do is they don't let them see the question answers. They only let them see the questions themselves, and then they, it's a learning tool to go back and research and figure out what the correct answer is rather than giving it to them. But it's up to you on that one. And then we will save that view, and so now you have 2 different views. You have your default view, which is what they see immediately upon submission, And then you have your after the quiz in views, which they see based upon this date that you put in. So now your quiz is available in the quizzes area. It has been completely set up. And if you scroll to the bottom, you should see it listed under current or future quizzes. Some little icons to let you know that things are set up correctly. This key icon lets you know that there is special access. This ribbon icon lets you know that it is associated to a grade item. So that's very important that you make sure to see these items, this icon, so that you know it is associated to a grade item. So the next thing that you want to do is associate it to the content area of the module that it goes with, because as of right now, you can choose quizzes, and the only place for a student to be able to view the quiz is in the quizzes area. So what you really want to do is link it to the content area so that they can get everything in one module. So we'll go to content, and then over here on the side, we'll find the module that it goes with. So in this case, I might have a final exam module where I've uploaded a study guide, I've uploaded other materials, and then I have the LinkedIn final. So in that case, if I don't already have one, I can make one for the final. So that's my module created for the final. And then here I could upload a file of like a study guide if I wanted to, or I could attach existing activities, and I'm going to choose quizzes, and I'm going to pick the quiz that I just created, which is that final exam. And now essentially what this does is double link it in. So essentially they can get to it from the quizzes area now, or more than likely they're going to go to the content area, find the module, and click on it from there. Another common question is, how do the students go back and see those quiz questions that they missed if I've set up that additional view? So once that additional view has passed and the time is open, so say on this case it would be March 11th, the student would go back to the quizzes area. They would see a listing of their quizzes just like you do. They would choose this drop down by the name of the quiz, and they would choose submissions. And then they would be able to choose that attempt. And if there was only one attempt at the exam, it would just be one attempt. If you allowed multiple attempts, they could click on each of those attempts. When they choose that, then they'll be able to see the questions that they missed. And so that's how they go back in and see the questions that they missed after that additional view has passed. Okay, so this is a video, again, just as a review to not only review the setup of the quiz, but specifically how to go ahead and bring in other quiz questions from other quizzes and to make one final exam.